Alright, with the calculator pulled up, I'm going to show you how to do the residuals in the calculator. It's really not a super difficult process, but make sure that you take good notes on where these buttons are, because some of these menu systems you can kind of get lost in. Yeah, I'm just going to enter our shoe size data, and we'll work from there. So back under Stat and Edit so that we can enter data. The person that was 5'1", I'm just going to call 1. Enter. The second person I'm just going to call 5'2", is just 2. So on and so forth, all the way until we get up to the person that was 5'9" in our study. Now that I have that data entered into L1, in L2 I'm going to put their actual shoe size as it was recorded. The 5'1" person had a shoe size of 4. 5'2" person has a shoe size of 6. The 5'3" person has a shoe size of 5.5. I'm going to use 5.5 for 5.5. The next person was 7. 5, 8, 6, 9, and 9.5. Once you have your data entered, since we just put underneath a stat list, we're going to obviously plot a stat plot. So second, y equals to get to your stat plots. Choose the one that you want. Normally I just use number 1 by default. And make sure that you turn it on. Go into the next set of menus. You want the first one that's usually highlighted by default. That's the scatter plot. And notice that it's actually going to plot L1 versus L2. So just simply pressing the graph button after that will give you a nice scatter plot. Of course, everything's in the first quadrant, so why am I really using all the rest of the quadrants and things of that nature? So let's adjust the window. The easiest ways to do this is to press zoom. And since everything's in the stat plot, you'll notice that number 9 says zoom stat. So I'm just going to press number 9. And it will spread out our data into just the window that we need to see. So the data fills it up and looks a lot bigger than it did before. So it's just being the first quadrant. At this point, it'd be really nice if we had a line of best fit. And to do that, what we're actually going to use is a linear regression. That is found under Stat, Calculate, and then you need to scroll down to a linear regression. In this case, it's choice number 4. So then I'm going to choose choice number 4, and this calculator has a nice menu-driven system. It asks you, what do you want the x value to be? Well, that was list 1. The y value was list 2. Frequency list we can actually leave blank. And this one will even let you store it so that you don't have to write down the numbers. If you choose not to store it, then you're going to have to write down the numbers for A and B and then plug it into the y equals key. A much quicker way is to just press variables, scroll over to y variables, pick choice number 1, and then just pick y1. And you'll notice that the little y1 pops up next to store the regression equation. That will actually store it in y1 for you, so it's really easy to graph after that. At which point all you need to do is press calculate. And it'll do its thing and it'll give you a value for A and a value for B. Well, once you have those, in order to see them on your graph and to see that it's actually entered, press y equals. You'll notice that it already has the function there for you. Now when you press graph, it'll actually graph your regression line. This is also often called a line of best fit when it comes to scatter plots. But now that we have that, we can actually look at what this lesson's about, which is the residuals. The residual can be defined as the difference from where this dot is to where it would be if it was on the line, going straight vertically up or down as the case may be. So basically you're not changing the x value, you're just seeing where the y value changes from. So from the line's y value to this point's y value, likewise from this one to that one, from this point value to its corresponding y value that would be on the line, which is all the things that were actually recorded in the stat list when we play around with it a little bit. So let's go back to our stat list and actually do that playing. Back to edit. This time I'm going to go over to list 3. I'm actually going to push the arrow up so that we can go to where the list variables are. And I'm going to actually press second list here. If you notice down here at the bottom of the L1, L2 list, there's an RESID, which is, of course, residuals. That is only there if you have just recently done a linear regression. If you press enter on that one, it'll actually say that it's storing them into list 3. Press enter one more time and it will tell you how far you are from the next Y value. So the person that was 5'1" in this case had a shoe size of 4, and it says that that dot is just a little bit below the line by about a half a size in this case. If you take a look at the next one, the 5'2" person was 6 foot. That's almost as a whole size off, because 0.98 is really close to 1. And that should be what you're seeing on your graph. So just a quick check of our graph. Was the first person really about a half size low and the next person really about a whole size high? Well, let's look. Just a little bit off the line, that's not far. Could be a half. And if that's a half, the next person is a whole. One whole size off. That's about the right distance, so it looks like it's doing the right thing for you. What's a whole lot more interesting is if we actually graph that. So I'm going to go back to my stat plot. I'm going to turn the second plot on. Keeping it a scatter, keeping L1 as list 1 for the X value, and instead of list 2 for the Y's, what we want to plot in there is actually list 3. So to do that, I'm going to press second, and just above the 3 you'll see a little L3 in blue. Click on that, will give you list 3. And for my calculator, it's actually going to graph it in red, as you can see from the menu below. So when I press graph again, I'll see my residual. Wait a minute. There's nothing red on my calculator. It's still drawing the blue stuff. Wonder where the red stuff went. Oh, I know. I'll bet you the window size is off again. So let's go back to zoom and actually pick zoom stat one more time. There's the red dots we were looking for. If you take a look at these red dots, you'll notice that they're kind of random. You know, this dot's below, this dot's above, this dot's pretty right on, a little bit above, a little bit below. Kind of has this worm feeling that's crossing up and down over the 0 line. That's actually a very good indication, because what that means is that the residuals are saying that you picked a pretty good regression. It makes it look like that your line actually does fit your data. I'm actually going to clear my calculator out at this point. Taking everything out of memory. That'll clear all of my stat lists. It'll reset all my settings to default. So with the calculator cleared and all my stat lists cleared, nothing left in the graphs, nothing in Y1 or the stat plots, everything should be turned off. I'm going to enter one more set of data just to show you something else about these residuals. So stat, I'm going to enter data, and this data is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And my value at 0 for this data, I'm not even telling you where it comes from. I just want you to see what happens. The value at 0 is negative 3. The value at 1 is negative 2. The value at 2 is 1. The value at 3 is 6. And the value at 4 is 13. And I'm just going to go ahead and calculate the linear regression of this. Notice I made a very big mistake of not even bothering to look at the data. I'm just assuming it's linear. So list 1, list 2, okay, and let's store this equation. So variables, y variables, function, choice number 1 again, and then tell it to calculate. So it'll calculate my regression as if it was a straight line and go ahead and store that in y for me. So pressing y, there's the nice equation. Let's turn on the stat plot so I can actually see the dots as well as the equation. So second, y equals. Go into the menu and turn the plot on, leaving everything by default after that. I'm going to press graph and see my dots in my line. And my line kind of looks like it goes through. The points are sort of in the middle. So we might actually even buy that after I look at it. But now I'm going to check on the residuals. So stats, editing in my lists again, over to L3. Second stat to get to the list button. We just checked the regression on it, so it's in memory. Pick residual, which I just missed somehow. Second list, since we just did a residual, it's in memory and we can just pick choice number 7. Enter one more time and it'll give us our numbers at that point. So let's graph those. Let's use the second stat plot so we get to see the first ones. Turn it on. Make sure we use L3 for our Y list. And it's going to graph this in red again. And when I press graph, it's like, kind of a bit of a mess there. I see all the blue dots, I see the red dots and things of that nature. Let's see if Zoom 9 will help us out any. Stretch this thing out, make it look a little bit better. Remember last time that the red dots were kind of above and below? This time the red dots seem to have a bit of a pattern there. Let me clean this up a little bit. Let me turn off anything that's blue. So we'll turn off the y equals. And we'll go ahead and turn off the first stat plot, so that we can just look at the graph of the residuals that we just got. If you notice this, if you're actually looking at this, it's not random. There seems to be a pattern. This is actually making one of those nice little U-curves. May even be quadratic for what we can tell. That says that this probably actually wasn't the best thing to use, because residuals should be random and just jumping around the 0 point. This one's pattern says, uh-oh, you did something wrong. So when I chose that linear regression without even looking earlier, even though it may have visually looked okay, the residuals are telling me this was not the best choice. There's probably a better function to choose. And that's kind of a lead into some other topics. So I think I'll leave residuals there. But residuals can be pretty powerful at telling you how well you've chosen your data and the model that you're using to model it.